The bell had not even finished ringing when the first strike landed on my chest, and in that single moment, 312 victories stopped meaning anything at all. My name is Corin Vex, and until that night, I was called Untouchable. Not as a nickname given in kindness, it was a title earned through 312 duels across 9 star systems, a title carved above every trophy in the Calith Combat Guild, a title that meant exactly what it said. No opponent had ever landed a clean hit on me. My reflex system was built from the finest augment lines our clan fortune could buy. My eyes could track a bolt of plasma through open air and calculate 6 different paths around it, before the bolt had even crossed half the distance to my body. I did not dodge because I was fortunate. I dodged because my body moved faster than anything alive was supposed to move. That was what I believed, right up until the moment it stopped being true. The guild told me my next opponent was a human. A name with no combat rating, no augment record, nothing but a short file that said he had arrived on a trade vessel 3 weeks earlier and asked, of all things, to be placed in the ring with the highest-ranked fighter available. I remember laughing when I read it. I remember telling my handlers to at least find someone worth my time before I considered retiring the title for good. His name was Daniel Cole. He walked into the arena wearing plain clothes, no armor, no weapon, nothing that marked him as a fighter at all. He looked like he had wandered in from a market street by mistake. He rolled his shoulders once, the way a person might stretch before a short walk, and he looked almost bored standing across the ring from me. I remember thinking that boredom was strange. Every opponent I had ever faced walked in with fear behind their eyes, even the ones who hit it well. Daniel Cole did not look afraid. He looked like a man waiting for a delayed train. I should have paid attention to that. I did not. The moment the bell rang, I began my opening sequence, the same faint step that had opened over 100 of my fights, a motion fast enough that on the guild sensors, it usually showed up as nothing more than a blur of heat and color. My foot had not even finished coming down when his fist met my chest. I did not understand it as a hit at first. My mind, trained by 312 fights of never being touched, treated it as an error, a sensor glitch, something to be ignored while I continued my planned movement. I started my second motion, the counter turn that had ended half of my fights before my opponents even understood what was happening to them. He hit me again, same side, higher, near my collar. The third strike landed on the side of my jaw, and that was the moment my mind finally caught up to what my body had already been told 5 separate times. This was not going according to any plan I had ever trained for. This was not a system I understood. The fourth strike came before I had even finished processing the third. The fifth strike came before I had finished processing the fourth. 5 clean hits, and I had not thrown a single strike of my own. 5 hits, and the reflexes that had made me a legend across 9 systems had done nothing but record the damage after it had already happened, like a historian writing about a war that was already lost before he picked up his pen. I finally raised my guard on the 6th attempt. It did not matter. By then, Daniel Cole had already stepped back, hands loose at his sides, watching me with an expression that was not cruelty and was not pride. It looked closer to disappointment, like he had been hoping I would catch up sooner than this. He said something to me then, quiet enough that only I could hear it over the noise of the crowd, who had gone completely silent, because nobody in that arena had ever seen anyone touch me before, let alone 5 times in a row. He said that I was fast, but fast at the wrong things. I did not understand what he meant, not that night. It took me weeks to understand it, and by the time I did, everything about how I saw my own species, and his, had changed completely. The guild medics scanned me after the match, certain that something in my augment system had failed. Nothing had failed. Every system reported perfect function. I had not lost because of a malfunction. I had lost because a man with no augments at all had simply been better than me, in a way my training had never prepared me to face. I watched the recording that night, alone in my quarters, slowed down frame by frame. Our arena cameras captured 40,000 frames every second, fast enough to catch even a bolt of energy in flight. I slowed his strikes down until each one stretched across 100 frames, until I could see the whole motion laid bare in front of me. and what I found there was worse than anything I had imagined. He was not reacting faster than me. Nothing alive reacts that fast from a resting position. What he was doing instead was committing faster. My augments were built to observe, calculate, and choose the ideal response. An elegant process that felt instant to everyone watching, but was, underneath all of that elegance, painfully slow. There was a gap between what my eyes saw and what my body did about it, a gap built entirely of thinking. Daniel Cole did not have that gap. His mind had made its decision before the bell had even finished sounding, and his body carried it out without asking permission first. I could not stop thinking about that gap. I asked the guild to arrange a meeting with him, not for a rematch, but for answers. He agreed without hesitation, and we met 2 days later in a quiet room above the arena, far from the crowds and the cameras. He told me he had trained at a boxing gym back on his homeworld for 6 years. Nothing special, he said. Just something he did after work, a few nights a week, to stay in shape and clear his head. He said there were people in that same gym who were twice as good as him, people who had never left their homeworld, people nobody outside their own city had ever heard of. I sat with that thought for a long time after he left. An entire species with reflexes like his, and he was telling me he was not even considered exceptional among his own kind. I began asking questions after that, not just about Daniel Cole, but about humans in general. What I learned unsettled me far more than losing the fight ever had. Their bodies were soft compared to ours, yes. No natural armor, no claws, nothing built by evolution for direct combat, the way so many other species had developed. But their nervous systems moved information in a way that made our finest augments look clumsy by comparison. They did not need to calculate the ideal response. They simply acted, and their instincts, shaped over countless generations on a homeworld full of danger, had never needed a machine to make them faster. The machine had always been built in. I asked him once, during that same meeting, if he had known what my reputation meant before he stepped into that ring. He said he had read the file. He knew I had never been touched in 312 fights. I asked him if that had worried him at all. He said no, and when I asked why, he told me something I have never forgotten. He said that a man who has never been hit does not know how to recover from being hit. He said that was the real weakness hiding behind every perfect record, not a flaw in the body, but a flaw in the mind. Because the moment something unexpected finally happens, a fighter who has never faced it before does not know what to do with the surprise. I told him that seemed like a strange way to build confidence, to expect failure before it ever happened. He said it was not about expecting failure. It was about never being surprised by it. He said back on his homeworld, in every serious training hall, fighters were taught to lose long before they were ever taught to win, because a person who has already tasted defeat in training does not freeze the first time it happens for real. I had never lost, not once, not even in practice, because the guild had built my entire career around protecting that perfect record. I understood, sitting in that quiet room, that they had made me strong in exactly the way that would eventually make me fragile. The story of the fight spread quickly across every guild channel and newsfeed in the sector. Within a week, other fighters from other systems were requesting matches against Daniel Cole, eager to test themselves against the species that had ended the longest winning streak in guild history. He declined every one of them. He told the guild officials, through a woman named Laura Bennett who managed his contract, that he had not come here looking for a career in the ring. He had only wanted to test himself once, against the best the guild had, and now that he had done it, he had no further interest. I met Laura Bennett briefly during one of those negotiations. She explained that Daniel Cole was not a professional fighter back home, not in any official sense. He worked as a transport engineer, someone who repaired the systems that kept trade ships running between worlds. Fighting, for him, had only ever been something to do after long shifts, a way to release tension, nothing more. It was strange to imagine a species where someone with reflexes capable of humbling an augmented champion spent his days fixing engines instead of competing for glory. The guild pressed him for weeks, offering larger and larger sums, hoping he would agree to at least one more match, ideally against me, since the demand for a rematch had grown louder with every passing day. I found myself, to my own surprise, hoping he would say yes. Not for the money. and not even for the guild's sake. I wanted to understand what had happened in that ring, and I believed that facing him again, properly this time, with my mind already prepared for what he could do, might teach me something no amount of watching recordings ever could. He finally agreed, but only on the condition that it would be his last match, win or lose, and that no cameras beyond the standard guild recording would be allowed inside the arena. He did not want a spectacle. He wanted, as he told me privately before the match, to see if a fighter who had truly learned from his first loss could stand differently the second time. I spent the weeks before that second match doing something I had never done in my entire career. I stopped training for speed and started training for recovery. I asked my instructors to hit me, over and over, without warning, until being struck no longer sent my mind into that useless loop of surprise and calculation. It was humbling in a way I cannot fully describe. Every strike that landed reminded me of the 5 that had landed against Daniel Cole, but slowly, over those weeks, something in me began to shift. I stopped flinching at the unexpected. I started, for the first time in my life, learning what it meant to lose small fights on purpose, so that I would never again be shattered by a single large one. The night of the second match, the arena was fuller than I had ever seen it. Word had spread across the sector that the Untouchable champion was facing the human who had ended his streak, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next. I walked out to a silence heavier than any cheering crowd could have created. Daniel Cole walked out a few moments later, calm as before, rolling his shoulders in that same easy way, and for a moment I almost smiled, because I finally understood what that motion meant. It was not boredom. It was readiness, worn so lightly that it looked like nothing at all. The bell rang, and this time, I did not begin with my usual opening sequence. I simply watched him, the way he had watched me the first time, waiting to see what he would do, rather than assuming I already knew. He moved first again, faster than my eyes could track in the traditional sense, but this time, instead of freezing while my mind tried to calculate a response, I let my body react on instinct, built from weeks of unexpected strikes in training. I did not stop his first attempt completely, but I moved enough that it landed as a glancing touch instead of a clean hit, and something in his expression changed, just slightly, a flicker of genuine interest replacing the calm boredom from before. The match that followed was nothing like the first. It lasted far longer, filled with exchanges that neither of us fully won outright. I still could not match his raw speed. No augment system could ever truly replicate what generations of human evolution had built into his instincts, but I no longer froze when he closed the gap I once thought was impossible to close. I absorbed strikes instead of being overwhelmed by them. I found small openings, not through greater speed, but through patience, through waiting for the moments when his own instincts, as sharp as they were, still had to choose between several possible movements. Near the end of the match, I landed a strike of my own, the first clean hit anyone in that arena had ever seen against him in his short but famous career. The crowd rose to its feet, louder than I had ever heard them, and for a moment, I felt something I had never felt in 312 easy victories. I felt like I had actually earned something. The match ended without either of us claiming a clear win by the old scoring system the guild had always used. The officials eventually called it even, the first match in guild history to end that way, and neither Daniel Cole nor I argued the decision. We both understood, standing there in the center of that arena, breathing hard, that something more important than a title had happened that night. Afterward, we sat together again in that same quiet room above the arena, and for a long while neither of us said anything at all. It was Daniel Cole who finally spoke first. He said that most people, when they lose something big, spend their energy trying to prove the loss was a mistake, a fluke, something that would not happen again if the conditions were only slightly different. He said the fact that I had spent weeks rebuilding myself from the ground up, instead of making excuses, told him more about my character than any winning streak ever could have. I told him that I still did not fully understand how his species had developed instincts so far beyond anything our augment technology could replicate. He said he was not sure he had a full answer either. He said maybe it came from a homeworld where nothing had ever protected them, the way armor and claws protected other species, so their minds had simply learned to move faster than fear itself, generation after generation, until speed of decision became as natural to them as breathing. I asked him if he thought other humans could do what he had done to me. He laughed quietly and said he was fairly certain most could, given enough time in a gym, and that the ones back home who trained seriously would likely make even our second match look slow by comparison. I found that thought both terrifying and strangely exciting, the idea that an entire species existed somewhere in this galaxy, capable of humbling every champion the guild had ever crowned, and most of them were probably at home right now, doing something as ordinary as fixing an engine or walking down a street, with no idea how remarkable they truly were. The guild retired my old title not long after that second match, not out of disrespect but out of honesty. They could no longer call anyone untouchable in good conscience, not after what had happened in that ring, not after the whole sector had watched the recording of those first 5 strikes landing, before I could even lift my guard. Instead, they gave me a new title, one that felt far more meaningful to me than the old one ever had. They called me the fighter who learned to fall, and for the first time in my career, I felt proud of a name the guild had given me. Daniel Cole returned to his ship not long after our second match, back to his quiet work repairing engines between worlds, uninterested in the fame the guild had tried so hard to offer him. I still speak with him occasionally, across the long distance between our systems, and every time we talk, I find myself asking another question about his species, and every time, his answers remind me how much I still do not understand about the beings who share this galaxy with the rest of us. I keep the recording of our first match still, and I show it now to every new fighter who joins the guild under my training. I tell them the same thing every time, the lesson that took me 312 easy victories and 1 humbling defeat to finally learn. Speed alone means nothing if your mind has never learned how to survive being surprised. It is not enough to see the danger coming. What matters most is how quickly you are willing to move once you have decided to face it, and how gracefully you recover on the day, and it always eventually comes, when someone faster than you finally walks into the ring. They still call him untouchable, back where his story is told the loudest, though not for the reason the guild once used that word for me. They mean it, because nobody who has faced him since has ever managed to land a hit of their own, not because he moves too fast to see, but because by the time anyone else has finished deciding what to do, he has already finished doing it.